Hi all, Ksposi here at the Adventuring Camping School in Northeast Thailand. I'm just continuing my series of video tutorials on my adventure craft system. And today's video will be just a quick exercise. It's our first exercise. We are going to build a survival kit based on the 10 survivor groups. And this will hopefully show you how effective and useful those 10 survivor groups are. I've already spoken about my 10 survivor groups in previous videos in this playlist. It was broken into two videos, survivor groups 1 to 5 and 6 to 10. And if you memorise those 10 survivor groups, you can build any sort of a kit, whether it's a survival kit, a camping kit, bug out bag, EDC bags, even if you're just preparing at home. The survivor group number 1 is shelter. What you need is a bare minimum shelter. It's a 6x8 tarp. You should have at least 4 metal stakes and 4 lengths of ready-made cordage. That's just thin string type cordage, about 10 to 12 feet long, so you can tie up the corners to the ground and or trees and branches and so forth. And then some sort of a ground sheet you can lay on, big enough for your body to lay on, to give yourself a barrier between you and the ground. You don't want to lay on dirt, so there's a ground sheet. And some options, you can take a mylar space blanket, which can be also used for signalling purposes. It's large, reflective, contrast for signalling. You can take ponchos, either a cheap disposable poncho or a better quality poncho, one you can tie out as well to make a shelter. And in very cold conditions, even a clear polyethylene plastic sheet 10 by 12 is large enough to make an enclosed igloo type shelter, fully enclosed on a wooden frame. Survivor group 2 is fire making. I'm just going to take my fire tin in an Altoids fire tin, as simple as that. It's got days, even weeks of fire making potential in there. I've already got videos where I talk about this survival tin in my fire making playlist. It's building your fire kit step 1. There's step 1, 2, 3. There are videos already online. Survivor group number 3 is cooking in containers. You need at least a cooking pot or some sort of a metal container to put on a fire, to boil water and cook food. I've just got my small emergency cooking pot here. It's good quality stainless steel, a nice tight fitting lid. The handle's no problems at all. This just costs $4.50 in a cheap bargain store back in Sydney, Australia. I've got a plastic cup in there. You can have a metal cup, plastic cup's fine, just a secondary cup. And I've got a stove grill in a Ziploc bag to keep it clean. Just a baked bean tin with holes punched in it. You can put that on the ground, get the pot off the ground, build a fire around there. I use this cooking pot in expedition number 1 to make lunch. And of course options, you can take a load of solid fuel. That stove grill, if you turn that over, solid fuel goes in. You can now cook, if you have enough solid fuel to cook one hot meal. That's my one hot meal scenario covered. I'll talk about the one hot meal scenario in future videos. You can also take a small alcohol stove or a gas stove, it's up to you, but at the bare minimum, a metal container cooking pot. It holds less than 2 cups of water, about 600 mils, which is fine for one man for one meal in emergencies. And you should have a metal water bottle. You can boil water in there, hang it on a fire, build a fire around there, so your first water bottle should be a metal water bottle. And just a few plastic bags as well, large garbage bags, Ziploc bags and so forth, containers. They're handy to put firewood in for tinder, keep it dry if it rains and so forth. The large plastic bag you can put on the ground, lay on that, sit on that as a ground sheet, make a rough raincoat and so forth. So now survivor group number 4 is food and water. I really can't recommend what you take. You just need enough food and water for whatever trip you're taking. At least one water bottle, which should be a metal water bottle so you can boil water in there. It can be a plastic water bottle, but I recommend your first water bottle should be metal. And whatever food and snacks and lunch you want to take for the day. You can make a fire and cook lunch if you want. You don't have to. You just need enough food and water for your trip. And if you at least take one hot meal, for example a packet of noodles and a tin of meat to supplement to put in the noodles, that's a survival situation covered, because if you have to sleep overnight somewhere, you've got one hot meal you can eat to get inside you, to give you the energy to get back home and so forth. Survivor group number 5 is knives and tools. I'm going to take my smaller working knife, 4.5-inch blade. That's enough for a survival kit for a one-day hike. You can take bigger knives, your main working knife, 6-inch full tang and so forth. You should take some sort of a multi-tool, even small pen knives like a Swiss Army knife or something. And options include a foldable pruning saw, which just helps you cut wood. So whatever you take is up to you. You can take as many tools as you want. Survivor group number 6 is cordage. You want at least a roll of cordage. That's also used to make a ridge line for your shelter. That's a 40-foot length of paracord broken down from a standard 100-foot length of paracord. I've broken down my 100-foot into a 40-foot and 60-foot to make a ridge line. 40-foot should be enough for most ridge lines. You can take the larger 60-foot if you want. And then as an option, you should have a roll of tape. That's just a small roll of electrical tape. You can take duct tape if you want. So that's cordage covered, and there are other options like wire, snare wire, zip ties, bungee cords and so forth. Survivor group number 7 is cloth materials. I can take my survivor wrap, which I've talked about in previous videos, cotton bandanas, and how's this for an option? I might take my tea towel, just a cotton tea towel. It's white, can be used for signalling. Any of these cloth materials should be bright colours so you can use for signalling. Even my survivor wrap, you can tie these to the end of sticks and wave them. It's nice contrast, especially a white tea towel. And tea towels are very useful, or any cloth materials from tea towels to survivor wraps to cotton bandana, even a handkerchief in your pocket are useful as water filters. You can clean your tools, you can clean your hands, you can clean your body. If they're bandages, they're first aid, you can carry things, and you can make char cloth if they're 100% cotton. So the cloth materials covered. Survivor group 8 is illumination. You can just take a torch. A torch, some sort of a headlamp is an option, some sort of a lantern. You've got a candle and fire making in survivor group number 2 as well, which is illumination at night times. So the very minimum, a torch, and that's illumination covered. Survivor group number 9 is first aid and health and hygiene. You at least want to take a small first aid kit. You want to have some band-aids, some gauze pads, disinfectant ointment cream, some painkillers like Aspros, some toothpicks, a couple of needles to take splinters out of your skin, just some basic first aid items, and of course your cloth materials, cordage, tape and so forth can all affect first aid in your kit as well. You don't need health and hygiene items because it's only an emergency survivor kit. If you want to go camping for 2 or 3 days or more, then you can take a health and hygiene kit, which I can talk about in future videos. And the more first aid knowledge you have, the better. And survivor group number 10 is navigation, signalling and communications. You will at least want a small button compass to get your orientation, a mirror which can be used for signalling. It's also a first aid tool. You can see your face, see your teeth, see your body for injuries and so forth. And a whistle. If you can't scream loudly, there's a whistle. You can get attention from a long distance. So that's navigation, signalling and communications covered in a very basic way, but it's been covered. And the +1 items, the 10 +1 items, I'm just going to have a baseball cap, small, compact, you can fold it up, put that into the bag easily, just for some head protection, some shade if it's sunny. Gloves to protect your hands, these are just gardening gloves, they're thin, you can maintain dexterity, manipulate your tools and so forth while wearing your gloves. You can take rubber gloves, leather gloves, whatever you like if it's wet. These do get wet, but if you have some waterproof gloves, that's fine. And some sort of eyewear protection. You can have sunglasses, and clear safety goggles are always an option. So if you're in thick bush, in the forest and so forth, you can still see where you're walking, but protect your eyes from being stabbed by branches and sticks and so forth. So that's a few personal items in the +1 category. So there it is, all those items packed into my small backpack. I can now take that for a hike, anything from a few hours to half a day to a full day. I've covered all the items I need to cover to help me affect my survival, especially in an emergency situation. I can sleep overnight, cook a meal, boil water and so forth. There's nothing else really that you need. You may argue about things like MREs and glow sticks and Snickers bars and all these amateur items which people take. You don't need it. Everything else is fluff and unnecessary. They're the most important items covered. That's Steve Ksposi out here. I hope you found it interesting, and I'll see you next time.